the Celestial Perspective Podcast, bringing you a fresh perspective on the Celestial Church of Christ.
There are a lot of controversies concerning Celestial Church of Christ, and we think it is high time we addressed some of these issues. Hallelujah. Welcome everybody to the Celestial Perspective Podcast, bringing you fresh perspectives on Celestial Church of Christ. And with me is my co-host, the beautiful Oyinkan.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you very much. Today, we're bringing you a fresh episode of the Celestial Perspective Podcast, and we hope that we would be privileged enough to open your eyes to see the truth about the fold in so many beautiful ways. Thank you.
And not to take too much of your time, I am about to introduce somebody I respect so much. He is the founder and president of Shaddaiville Ministries. He is also the chairman of Celestial Seminary International, as well as a prophet and most superior evangelist of Celestial Church of Christ. He is also a shepherd. As a matter of fact, he's an iconic shepherd, and there's so much to say about him. But to keep it brief, I'd like to introduce our daddy here, Prophet Dr. Kunle Hamilton.
Thank you, Ikosala. Thank you, Joseph. And thanks for having me. I'm Kunle Hamilton. I'm so happy to be here to talk about our great church.
Yeah, to just add this, daddy has a myriad of, achievements that would have loved to discuss. But to go straight to the topic, before we started, I asked you a simple question, sir. I said, why are we always at the center of controversies? Why are we always the one spoken of, when it comes to, negative feedback, negative things concerning churches? Why is Celestial Church always at the center of it?
Well, for many reasons, but first and foremost, when you have so much you're doing, when you're a phenomenon, people will talk about you. When there's mystery wrapped around your essence, people may not have access to you, so they will create their own narratives about you. And Celestial Church is in the middle of all of this, and I'm not surprised that in 76 years, people have not stopped talking about us. We are probably one of the latest entrants into the white garment field because we have the CNS that is older than us. So we are a phenomenon. I'm not shocked that people are talking about us.
Well, it sometimes not only rests on what people say about us. Sometimes it's the response to what people say about us. And, sometimes the response makes it messy. There are a lot of people who latch on the Celestial Church of Christ to say certain things that are true, are also untrue. But, our response to some of these things amplify them and give them life. So we believe we want to talk about some of these things and, set the record straight and iron them out.
Personally, I believe that the one of the reasons why this beautiful fold is always at the center of controversies is because we really care less about perspectives of public people. We just want to do our thing and just feel like it's just to glorify God. We don't have to put effort into so many things like the media, like education, like technology. We just feel like we just have to focus on church and spirituality. And I believe that if we give ourselves to see the advancements that has come up over the years and come from the archaic views that we used to have about our own fold, I believe that we'll be able to get a grip of all of these things.
All right, so Daddy, like I said earlier, we're not here to save face. Okay, so we're not here to save face. We're not here to rub makeup on whatever.
I have makeup on.
Well, so this is the question. Are we going to categorically say that what everybody is saying about this church, what most people who are vocal about this church, who are not in this fold, but have so much to say about this church, in the negative sense? Are we going to say that all they are saying is categorically false?
No, we can't say that. As a Celestian, I'll confess to you that there are so many things going on around me that is less than Christian. So when I hear people outside of the church mention those things and criticize those things, my reaction is not always to be defensive. Quite a number of people are in our fold who are not off our fold. I say that.
Can you say that again, sir?
I said quite a number of people
Who are
in the Celestial Church,
in the
but they are
church?
not off the Celestial Church.
Okay.
Meaning that you can go to school and school will not go through you. We are a church that prides itself on spiritual discipline. But within the same church, we see people get extremely reckless with the things they say, the things they do. They stand in the church, they call themselves Celestians, and everything about them is anti the tenets and liturgy of the church. But we are not doing enough to curb those excesses. The pastorate could do a lot more. So when people come against us, sometimes it's because they have experienced a portion of us that puts a lie to our avowed Christianity
That
and
makes us look
liturgy.
like we are false advertising.
Exactly. So I'm able to spot those instances, and I'm able to come out boldly and confidently to tell people that no, that is a misrepresentation of Celestial Church. But for somebody who's had terrible experiences within the Celestial Church, who used to be a member of the church, and who for certain reasons left the church angrily because of those things, you'll be silly, almost stupid, to say that those things don't exist that push people out.
What you just said, it gets very difficult to convince people, that what you're saying is the actual perspective and not just like when people see me and they see certain things, they will say, look, you must be celestial with a difference. And I tell them, look, I am not celestial with a difference. I am celestial. What you are seeing there, that negative thing you're seeing there is the difference. This is what celestial, but it gets, quite difficult to explain this to people because, what they tell you is, look, the information I'm giving you is firsthand. Come to the church behind my house. There's one of your parish on my street.
Experience, I've
So
seen it.
they seem to speak from firsthand experience. So what do we have to say about that? How do you convince somebody that what he's saying is the facade and what you're saying is the actual truth about our church?
Well, thanks, Joseph, for going in that direction, because I also think that within our members, the female side to Celestial Church is often times the victims. I don't know if Oyinkan will agree with me on this. Almost 8 to 9 times of 10, those who are angry about their experiences are women. So there must be something wrong. Everybody else, something wrong from within. Everybody else that's criticizing this or that about our church cannot all be wrong. But again, perhaps because I'm a media professional, even when people do have negative things to say about us, it is our job as Celestians to go out there and talk about everything that is good about us. And then it is the job of church authorities not to play the ostrich and bury their head in what I call the sands of Ilano, but see the need first to curb excesses of those who run down the image of the church from within and without, and promote godliness the more. That way, those who have things that are good to say about our church have a clearer path to say it. Because, we're on set now. We're discussing what people say about us. Imagine somebody who was not scheduled to be on this set rush in and say, I know that you people wanted to sit down and talk good about your church, but this and this and this is what happened to me 20 years while I was in Celestial Church. How do we defend that? So we will not bury our heads in the sand. I can't clean out our audience stables. I'm not in a position to do so. The pastor is. Those who work with the pastor, they are in that position. What we can do as ordinary members of the church, permit me to call myself ordinary, is continue to say the good things for which the Lord has kept us in the church. And then when we have the opportunity to speak with those who are really correctly angry about their experiences with the CCC, we can then put things in perspective, listen to them, understand where they went wrong, and it's a better way to begin to correct the backlash that keeps coming to us.
Okay, so now you would see that the trajectory of the discussion is moving towards representation of the truth, of this church. But, there are certain people who are shepherds, who are popular figures in the church, who have found success in amplifying their voice. As a matter of fact, people look at them and say, this is the representation of the church online. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. There are certain people who, if there is a backlash, for instance, people are expecting them to speak on behalf of the church. Now, and many times they might come forward with perspectives that are not even right, or that the church leadership might not even agree with. How do we tackle that? Because everybody has, a free platform. And if you can find your way around the algorithm, you'll be popular. And people will say,
you know why I'm laughing?
Why, sir?
I've not seen another church in the world that has its own members coming on social media to attack it like Celestial Church.
I think we're number one in that.
How many pastors have you seen in the last 3 decades coming out to represent the Redeemed Christian Church of God on any issue?
Hardly seen any.
But in Celestial Church, every Tom, Dick, and Harry has appointed himself or herself as a spokesperson for the church. Unfortunately for us, the authorities of the church are just beginning to wake up in the 76th year of the lifespan of our church to say, we have a media issue. Now we want to begin to talk about it and tell those who have taken to the media, those who believe that it is their right to defend their faith, and they can self-appoint to do so. They've been doing it for years, some of them for over a decade. We wake up overnight and say we want to change this. It's not going to be easy. It's one of the reasons there is so much backlash. There are too many unqualified people trying to speak about the church as representatives of the church.
To speak on behalf of the church. Has there been any situation or any case in the history of social media that any church has controlled that? Because we need specificities here. If since I can't come to Oyinkan now and seize her phone and say, bring that phone. What are you recording in your garment? So is there any case where we know categorically that this has been tackled or it can be tackled?
Let me tell you an experience I had with the Fountain of Life Church. I can say the name of the church because it's a fine experience. I was editor of a major newspaper and I needed a cover story. And at the time, late Pastor Bimbo Dukoya was really, really trending. The Christian field in Celestial Church had not seen any phenomenon like her. So I said, if I can get an interview with Pastor Bimbo, that would easily make my cover on my paper. So I called a couple of assistants, including a photographer. I said, let's go down. Today, they have a midweek service in Fountain of Life Church in Lulukweju. We're going to blast them. So we got there. The first thing I noticed was that the ushers knew that these were not people just coming off the streets to come and worship. These guys have come with a mission. As soon as they noticed that, they posted an usher, because I was sensitive to my surrounding. They posted an usher right next to me. So I whispered to my assistant, they know we're here, but they don't know who we are. And
But they weren't ready to take any
they
chances.
handle it with such professionalism, the kind of what we lack in our church. I can tell you that at that point, if I had brought out a camera, somebody would have walked up to me and said, "What are you doing with the camera?" So
This was what year, sir?
This was about 15 years ago.
Probably before the advent of, or the rave of social media.
Yeah, at that time, you will not do it with a mobile phone.
A digital camera.
Yes, my
those small
photographer
ones.
brought out his camera and they went to him and said, "From where? We didn't order this, so who are you taking shots for?" So what I'm saying is that as Celestial Church, there is absolutely nothing wrong if the church adopts it as its policy that you can use your Bible on the phone, but you cannot use your phone to record anything in the church. It's nothing wrong with that. It's one of the things we need to learn. And people are responding to it negatively because we have allowed them for too long to think they can have it their way.
So now it looks like the norm.
Exactly.
I think it's a good point to go on a short break. We'll be back.
The Celestial Perspective Podcast, bringing you a fresh perspective on the Celestial Church of Christ.
Now we're going into the details proper. Why has Celestial Church of Christ been having all of this unending backlash? We actually want to know, and we want our points to be well defined. That's why we have this epitome of wisdom in the house. So, Daddy, you were saying before we went on the break that whenever people like bring out their mobile phones to just do random recordings in the church, they should be questioned. How do you think people would take being questioned for recording on their mobile phones that they bought with their personal, funds?
Thank you very much, Oyinkan. For too long, we've been riding roughshod. A lot of people have turned parishes into party grounds. We are beginning to see that all of this is not showcasing us as a proper and disciplined church. So, I'm not surprised that people, since a pastoral order came out, I think it was titled something like Managing the Image of the Church. And then some of the details was that from now on, people will no longer be allowed to bring their phones into the church. Well, I can say that what the pastor has said is a bit too harsh. But the truth is that what are you supposed to be doing with your phone in a church? Only for your Bible if it's in there. All phones should not just be on silent and vibration. They actually should be on airplane mode, because that's the only mode where you can use your Bible without doing anything else on the phone. Now, it may be too harsh because there are people who, if a medical doctor is on call 24/7 and is a Celestian and is an elder in the church, or he's there in church because he's been programmed to preach, he will not put his phone on airplane mode because he has a higher duty to take care of an emergency. So it is not by age that you're a medical doctor. You can be a medical doctor at the age of 22 and you're on call because you're that good where you work. So that order along the line will be fine-tuned to accommodate professionals like that in our midst who have a reason. Same thing, a Celestian who is a policeman. But when you don't fall in these categories, it only makes sense that if you're allowed to use your phone at all, it can only be for Bible use till the service is over. It is grossly unchristian to be doing Snapchatting during a service.
I was about to mention that. How about people who want to do Snapchat in church?
It is grossly unchristian. Look, at the end of the day, one of my greatest angst against a lot of our members is that they don't see church as church. They see church as a playing ground. And it shows in the dance steps.
Yes.
It shows in what we do with our phones. The service is going on and people are showing themselves Instagram posts. So at the end of the day, if you put the quantum of time spent in church in a whole year, you'll see that the distractions in the lives of many young Celestians is so much that they cannot grow as Christians in the church.
So where do shepherds come in all this? There have been several cases online whereby, a service is going on. This is not even an individual phone recording. It's the church media recording, the church where the choir is singing a song that is probably, popular in the streets. And,
redefined.
Some of them don't even redefine it. That's just the truth.
Wow.
Some of them don't redefine it.
Just bring it on.
I have so many cases off my head that I can start counting. Okay, one scenario. There was a time that this song was very popular in the streets. Jobi Oloshi, Jobi Kineko. And it was a new moon service. The reason why I know this was not an individual recording because the shot was from a camera. It was from an actual camera. And you wonder, this parish has a shepherd, has a presiding shepherd.
Well, that Jobi was sung by a gospel artist.
No? Jobi Oloshi.
Not Oloshi. He didn't say Oloshi. He just said, oh yeah, Jobi Kinikon. I think
do you
Mike
know the song I'm talking about?
Mike Abdul, yeah, he has that song.
No. This song is by Olamide.
I know. I mean, a gospel artist redefined that song. That's where the confusion is
But the one
from.
I heard in that church was not a redefinition.
Own.
It was not a redefinition.
Wow.
Okay, let's even talk about redefinitions now.
Okay.
Are redefinitions right?
All right, Daddy.
Should people sing redefinitions?
That's why I smiled. Because even more recently, a so-called gospel artist was charged with borrowing language from idolatry.
Yes.
And saying I'm redefining that.
I borrow some.
I am a prophet in the Celestial Church. This is my first and primary calling. So I give a message to someone and I end it with Ye Paripa. Think about it. What have I redefined?
In her defense, some people said, offer up yourselves as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable. And people were quoting
They are
Paul.
not the same. You see, we're talking about why the church is getting backlash.
Yeah.
And we are already identifying reasons. Because we allow unchristian practices in our choir, unchristian practices during sermon. And you brought up the issue of shepherds. And what you don't have, you can't give. If a shepherd is always on his phone doing his service, how can he tell his members not to do the same? If a shepherd is walking all over the place, he's the same person bringing people out of the church because he wants to talk to them outside of the church. How can he tell people to be disciplined? What you don't have, you can give. But when you are in a parish where the shepherd is grossly disciplined, he will not mix anything with his reverence of God in church. It tends to pervade the entire atmosphere in the parish. And that's what we need. More exemplary shepherds, more worded prophets.
What's your role in this, sir? Because, I'm well aware that you are the chairman of Celestial Seminary International. So I think we can bring this home now.
Okay, before we discuss about his role, I guess that's like a solution. I want to quickly ask something. How do we, because we're like all this to keep the youth in the church, we have to be Afrocentric, hippie, hyper. gospel, street gospel. So how do we keep the future of the church? And that is by keeping the youth. So how do we sustain the youth even with all the seemingly old standard beliefs and songs and all of that?
Thank you very much. You see, one of the things that helps me to put the things I see around us in our great church in perspective is that I also look at what other churches are doing. We tell ourselves a lie in white garment wearing churches as if indigenous practices are the things that our people need to play up our culture in our church. It's not the same in the Pentecostal churches. It's not the same in the Orthodox churches. In the Catholic Church, they have the charismatic movement, which was created and sustained by their youth. But there is nothing in the charismatic movement that represents the street. So we really don't need the street to keep our youth. We're the ones allowing distractions in the lives of our youth. Our youth need youthful music. And youthful music is in the instrumentation and in the lyrics and in the style. And you can take the old music of the CAC and do a cover of it that will appeal to the youth. You don't need to go and take an Olamide kind of music.
Yeah.
We have gotten it wrong. What I find is that so much gets into our system through our music. And through our prophetic ministry. So if we can focus a bit, and I'm glad that Joseph, you are a maestro in that field. You are a spoken word artist. You know what I'm talking about. If we take that, the first thing I want to see as a change that can help us prevent a lot of this backlash is scrutinize our choir masters. Do they know the word? It doesn't matter how talented they are. If they don't have the character, they should not head our choir.
You're not rooted.
Don't head the choir because you play with Lagbaja. Don't head the choir because you play with Sonny.
Or you're the head of a band.
No. The first thing is you're supposed to be singing gospel music in that choir. How much do you know the gospel as a choir master? Because that is what is going to trickle down to everyone else under your leadership in that choir.
Okay,
True.
so I think our music director is here. So what do you think? What do you think the solution is? Or how do you think we can redefine that area that can sustain the youth?
Me, personally, I believe it starts from the head. Because we're talking about choir masters now. Before you talk about choir masters, how many shepherds are very versed in scripture? I remember, let me tell you a personal experience. If you're looking for very good songwriters, and I heard this from Don Moore, he said this is how they fished for songwriters. They went to churches that had the word, that had a presiding pastor that preached undiluted gospel, the undiluted gospel of Christ, and it was almost like clockwork. They knew if this church was versed in the word, they would produce musicians that were versed in the word. What you just mentioned now, sir, you said people should be scrutinized if they have the word before they are even appointed as choir masters. How many people even consider this as priority?
No, they don't. They definitely don't.
Just the good voice. And
he sings very well. He has a band.
Well.
This choir has, I know a choir that has like 5 different bands. And this person is the head of his band.
Yeah.
5 of his BGVs, background vocalists,
Yeah,
are
so
in the same choir. And this one has his own band. And so it becomes a competition when everybody comes to church. They sing the latest. There are even certain praise songs that when you hear, immediately your spirit antagonizes them because every song has a spirit
Where's
behind
the honor of God in this one?
Yeah.
No honor at all. Some of them are not even biblically correct or theologically correct. You just listen to songs and there are certain people who say this is the angle of the church that they like. If I want to dance, I go to Sele. Yes. And I ask you, church, do you think we don't have sober reflective moments. How would you look at me and say, Timothy Jo, Timothy wa ni mood láti jo? Mo fẹ́ wá sí Sele. And I always say it's not Sele, it's Celestial Church.
Yeah, some people
So
even said
please
it
note,
that
it's not Sele, Celestial Church.
of Christ.
No, for short, you can say Celestial Church. But Sele, what is Sele? It's not our name.
Seleto.
And some people even say it, especially concerning what I do, that what the quiet you, what the gentle you.
They will say this is not a temperament for a celestial
what
girl.
are you doing here?
What do you
Where is
mean by
Mega
that?
99?
What do you mean by that? Oh, gentle, almost a little gentle.
Right.
What's that?
Don't know.
So
Well, we left something hanging. The challenge of, so what are we doing from the seminary angle?
Yes. Sir.
yes,
You want
I
us to
think
talk about that now?
yes, we should.
All right. I must confess that it was a very daunting challenge. When I got the appointment over a year ago, towards the close of year 2021, I wanted to say no. Because I did not believe that in 75 years, we had shown any seriousness as a church to correct anything. So, and I don't do things in half measures. So I wasn't too sure that my kind of person was needed for that kind of work. But the Holy Spirit convicted me that, look, it's something we've been preparing you for, so take it. I did, and I'm glad I did. The seminary is set up to raise and nurture workers and shepherds for Celestial Church. That's what every serious church does. That's why the Baptist Church has one of the most versatile, most respected seminaries in the world. Even though I'm talking of the Baptist Theological Seminary. I think they're based in Ibadan. They are respected around the world. So is the seminary for the Catholics around the world. The seminary for the CNS is miles ahead of us in Celestial Church. I'll confess that.
On which metrics exactly, sir?
On the metrics of their infrastructure and the age at which they've been consistent. We have not been consistent. Our seminary is from birth over 30 years old, but suspended for almost 15 years. So we don't have continuity. The first thing we realized and I must confess, I had a great team to work with. Very honorable and respected men and women in Celestial Church. We had a very, very robust inquiry system. We called in people who were working and schooling at the seminary to face our panel and we asked them questions, we recorded everything. The first thing we realized was that the curriculum of the seminary has run for 3 years when we were called in to come and scrutinize the process. Could never have produced good workers or shepherds for Celestial. Never. There was nothing concrete about liturgy. And then it was a rubber dub, borrowed from the internet, cut and paste kind of curriculum. So we cleaned that out. We got thoroughbred theologians in the Celestial Church and historians of the Celestial culture. And
because of the peculiarity of the church?
Oh, yeah. You see, every seminary set up by a church is first and foremost to cater to the needs of the church, not cater to people who will come to the seminary and go and work outside the church.
Outside the church, okay.
You understand? So we must be heavy on liturgy. Ironically, people think I hate the liturgy in Celestial Church. Ironically. But I superintended over a system that ensured that the current seminary has the most robust liturgy curriculum in the 76-year history of Celestial Church. We consulted widely. There is no area of our liturgy that's not covered in the new curriculum. Theory and practice. We had to recommend for SAC. We recommended for SAC a number of people. We found
sack. S-A-C-K.
Yeah.
You mean shepherds were actually sacked?
No. Those who ran the seminary.
Okay.
We found them wanting on several levels. We queried the system. So what we have now, if allowed to run, because all this repair work was signed by the trustees of the church and the pastor of the church about Easter time last year. And it did not become fully effective until October when the institution reopened. So the institution has only done one full semester and they're on their second one. What we have ensured is that in 3 years, anybody who does the 3-year program and graduates in the current Celestial Church of Christ Theological Seminary will be able to discuss the gospel of Jesus Christ foot to foot with Catholics, with Pentecostals, with Orthodox Christians without batting an eyelid. Because we also have the soundest, most robust theological curriculum. I mean, I heard on that curriculum committee a professor, and I'm not talking professor of theology. I had professors of theology, I had professor of mathematics, a man who brought the discipline of academia to what we have. I had a young Celestian who has 2 PhDs in theology and who is also a banker. So we brought mentalities together that should create a sound teaching platform for the next generation of shepherds. Those shepherds will not be guilty of the things we're pointing out right now.
Pains me to cut the stream of thoughts right now, but we need to go on a break.
The Celestial Perspective Podcast, bringing you a fresh perspective on the Celestial Church of Christ.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for staying with us. So I want to latch on something Daddy said. He said that many people think that he's not a stickler for Ilano. What's Ilano in English? Liturgy, I mean?
Liturgy or tenet.
Okay, or tenets of the church. So I want to start from the backlash within, and then we spread our tentacles to the backlash without. Recently, I remember that there was a backlash on your ministry, or on your, should I say, on your pressing, concerning a service that you aired. I don't know if I'm correct with all the specifics, but there was a service in your parish where people bowed their heads, prostrate for that.
I think it's a crossover service.
Crossover service,
yes,
Abby.
crossover service.
But there was no altar.
Yeah.
And
there was a lot of backlash.
Being the chairman of Celestial Seminary. Mm-hmm. Okay, first let me even ask you, how did you survive the backlash?
Thank you very much. I think I want to use the opportunity to let you know that in all my 40 years in Celestial Church, that was the biggest moment that my integrity was called to question as a Celestian. And it took all I could to not go out defending myself from page to page because everybody was just tearing me down and tearing down the ministry. But I like to say this. The progenitor of the Celestial Church of Christ, Papa SBG Oshofa, was one of few shepherds who operated in the 5-fold ministry as enunciated by the Bible.
Yes.
Now, what people fail to understand...
Is that Ephesians 5?
Yes. But what people fail to understand is that if God had made the progenitor lack any of those capacities in the 5-fold ministry, then perhaps where he lacked would not have featured in the operations of the church. There's a reason why oil runs from the head of Aaron down his beard and his garment to the floor, because that's how God blesses a commission, from the head downwards, and then it gathers momentum and gathers strength. The teaching ministry of Papa Oshofa did not find expression for a youth organization. It took a Professor Odeyemi to create a structure for the youth in Celestial Church. A lot of people do not know that the Sunday school did not start with the birth of the Celestial Church. It took well over 15 years, if not more. Yes, before we started having juvenile harvest in Celestial Church, and the children church, as others will call it, started having a form in the Celestial Church. A parish like Oluti took the Sunday school system in the Celestial Church, which in most parishes is just a smaller and dummy adult church with his own altar. In Oluti Parish, for instance, under late Baba Koka, they turned Sunday school into classes because they saw the need to teach and scale up so that you're not teaching teenagers the same thing you're teaching kindergarten kids or toddlers. It takes the visionary to get things started. It takes vision helpers to key into their understandings of the vision. What we do in CC Praiseville, which people were criticizing, is an extension of Papa's teaching ministry. And the greatest lack of the body of Christ in Celestial Church is not to allow sound teaching in the church. We spend 5 hours to 6 or 7 or 8, depending on the parish that you're looking at. And the teaching in the pulpit time is not up to 15 minutes, even when a preacher spends 1 hour.
Because
that
it could be
deficiency-
reading with history, tales.
Yes, so that
Yeah.
deficiency has crippled Christian growth in our church. So God would always raise people. He raised a Paul after the entire number of disciples seemed to have gotten it wrong, what Jesus was asking them to take over after power came upon them. It took a Paul who was a first-class lawyer, a Sadducee and a Pharisee, but a first-class lawyer,
Yeah, I was a Pharisee.
to take the same gospel of Jesus Christ. And Paul challenged Peter, who was the head of the teaching ministry Christ left behind. Said,
He
Peter,
reprimanded
you
him.
mean you still
That's
didn't
the word.
understand
Yes.
what Jesus was talking about, and you're still handling the word like primary school student like this.
Okay,
Now, where I'm going is this. Sorry, Joseph.
Yes,
where
sir.
I'm going is this. When the backlash came,
Yeah.
I took it in my stride. And I looked at how ignorant a lot of my detractors were, not understanding that the phenomenon that crippled the world in 2020, COVID-19, was God's way of showing the church that I am God over the physical church as well as the virtual church. That church is really not the four walls or where we are. An altar is really not just the candle lit symbol we have.
But I'm going to be honest with you. This would not justify it for many people.
No.
Right.
It may not, but it does not
It
change the
would.
fact.
It would.
Let me ask you, were altars laid in the Bible? Yes.
Yes,
Did
they
they all
were.
have candles? No.
No. But people will say specifically.
Does the absence of candle remove altar value of an altar? No. Is the mission of CCC Praiseville as a teaching ministry to take over what the parishes are doing? No. What happened? And I realized that as soon as I went on my wall and pointed this out as a teaching, all the angst died. What did I point out to them? It happens only once in 7 years. That
What happened?
crossover will be a Saturday into a Sunday because there are 7 days a week. So we were stuck as a teaching ministry. Should we not hold service on Christmas Day Because our service is a breakfast service, 7 to 9 a.m.
And then by 10 people can be
And
in
that
their
particular
parishes.
year, yes, everybody goes to their parishes from 9 o'clock.
Oh,
In
wow.
fact, our breakfast services is the reason that all villas, that's what we call ourselves. You're a member of the Praiseville Ministry, a villa. All villas get to their parishes on time. While the parish system is struggling to have people in church at 10 o'clock, we're getting people out of their beds by 5 a.m. It's a plus for the Celestial Church, and they're getting to their parishes before 10. Should we hold service on Christmas Day? It's a Sunday that year. Or forgo Christmas Day service, Christmas Day shower 7 to 9, and then forgo New Year's Day service 7 to 9. That was why we had to take that hard decision that, look, we keep everybody in church for the watch night. And then inside that watch night, at 12 midnight, we are already Sunday, Christmas Day, Sunday, New Year Day. And then what we should do at 7 o'clock, we do it immediately after the procedure for the crossover. And that's what we did. Particularly, I called the elders of my ministry and said, look, what we're about to do will cause a lot of backlash. Do you think we should put an altar there because people are going to bow down? That's what we do as Celestians in crossover. It's a high mass.
Yes.
So should we, because we're going to have that high mass, put the candlesticks altar there, 7, which we have, but we are a teaching ministry. So we are stuck between changing our face as a teaching ministry because we want to do service and make it a temporary thing.
Okay, so why
And
not?
the consensus was no.
So
we can.
a question can ensue that why not allow people go to their parishes that day?
Then we will not have a service on Sunday morning. Think about it. Our service is not 10 o'clock, it's 7. How do you go to watch nights in Akoka 1? You're a praise villa. You do watch nights in Akoka 1, which may end at 4 a.m.
Okay.
You still have 4 hours sleep if you want, and you're living in church before the 10 o'clock service. Half of the number in the congregation will still not come because they have done overnight service. So the last thing you want to do is go to a place where they do service at 7 a.m.
So that's very understandable, sir. And if you didn't explain this, many of us won't understand the actual reason behind that. And I also heard something, Joseph, I think something about this popular actress that
Funke
came.
Akindele.
Yeah, so we don't know the actual gist. Like she just we don't
Was
get
there
it.
a problem with her coming? I
Or
don't
the
understand.
Okwe, or we didn't get the actual problem. So
All right, I'll
what
tell
was
you
the
the
problem?
gist.
Okay.
We in the
what's area?
CCC was at the hub of this.
Ah,
Because we in the
Is that
CCC
so?
they loved the clip. They loved the
Okay.
clip and they showcased it.
okay.
I think because we follow them and they follow us back, they see our
Okay.
posts.
Okay.
So they rebroadcast the thing. And the problem people had was that while Funke Akindele was doing Thanksgiving in CCC Praiseville, there was a lady beside her who was not in sutana. Funke was in sutana and didn't have any shoes on. But there was a lady beside her who was in sutana and who had shoes on. That was what they were criticizing. Again, it's the self-righteousness of our people. A lot of the backlash we have on the inside is out of naivety and ignorance. People can ask. Look, if you go to my Facebook page, my mobile number is there. The address of the ministry is there. So people have access, but they will not use access. They will just go judgmental. The criticism is, if this is actually a celestial assembly, how can anybody be wearing church? But there's no altar there, so they can wear shoes.
Okay, so is an altar a prerequisite for Thanksgiving normally, or we can do Thanksgiving without the altar?
Thank God that the Bible is the standard,
Okay.
not our liturgy. the Bible is the standard. Can you say your thanksgiving in prayers to God without
course.
wearing your sutana? Will
Course.
God listen to you?
Of course.
That's the point.
I think that settles it.
Thank
So
you.
maybe we should cap it on backlash within. Let's bring a broader perspective
Come
into this
outside.
discussion.
Again.
Backlash without.
Yeah, so the elephant in the room. Before we even talk about that, there is a very, very pervasive perspective that we are a church. Matter of fact, people see us as an alternative to maybe fetish belief or fetish
To
gatherings.
herbalists.
Yeah.
Mm.
There was a young boy that came to my church one day. He came, a boy of maybe 16, 17 years old. He came to the church. He got down on a bike with a lady. And then he saw one of the workers, there in church, and he said, I came to pray. And then they asked him, okay, pray on what? Said, share me my work. I'm trying to translate for. And so they said, okay, Risha Oloshe. He laughed. Irusha Oloshe, young man.
16-year-old.
Yes, 16, 17.
Wow.
He couldn't have been older than that. Irusha Oloshe, young man, before we pray for you, G.
G.
So
G guy.
when somebody is a G boy, you know what that means.
Of course.
So
Both of you know, but I don't.
okay, so
Who's a G boy?
Daddy, you
let's
know.
Is that a boy
let's
that
make
wears
it more
G-strings?
formal. No, sir. So let's use a formal phrase. Somebody who is into cyber fraud.
Yahoo, that's the word. It's not
And so he said
cyber
G ni mo n ṣe.
G,
And then the man
right.
said, look at the interesting question he asked him. He said, when you looked at the signpost here, what did you see? Didn't you see that this place is a church? And he said, mo mother, but mo mo in law. Báwo ló ṣe ń lọ?
Right.
And so that man tried to start preaching to him, and he just said, why be from preaching?
They don't
Tẹ́ bá ti mọ̀
care.
pé, ẹ lè ṣe fún mi, màá lọ síbòmí. And the
Yeah.
sad reality there is, before he goes to 3 more parishes, he will find one
Right.
that will say. So, these issues, we need to address them, because if we're just trying to, beautify this thing on the face, that's a peripheral solution. There are rots that are happening within. How do we tackle that? Especially, for the chairman of, I keep saying
The
that, chairman of the
seminary.
Celestial Seminary.
Well, you're
And
right.
Daddy, let me add to that question. It actually works for them.
How do you mean?
Like the celestial Ishe works for them. How?
Okay, I'll
They
tell
cash out,
you.
as the case may be.
I'll tell you something about
Okay.
Ishe Akonse.
Okay.
Please, when we say Ishe, what are we saying? So that people who don't understand,
Spiritual works,
spiritual
which
works.
are the
Okay.
scale up of regular prayers.
Scale up. Prayer Pro Max.
I like that. I'll borrow that from you. But before then, there are instances like that. There are instances of commercial sex workers who think they can go to white garment churches, not peculiar to Celestial Church, and get people to pray for them. I have met prophets who declare that they are not here for Genesis to Revelation. They want to use their prophetic gift to make money, and the people to make money from are those who are into crime, like armed robbers, those who are into fraud, like Yahoo boys, are those who are into prostitution and things like that. And people see this. We cannot shy away from it. We also have instances of shepherds and prophets who, because their intention in going into church work or setting up a parish is to make money.
Matter of fact, there's a shepherd somewhere in Ikorodu who has a reputation for, carrying out spiritual works for G-boys, Yahoo boys.
Yeah, you get there.
To the
you
point where
cash
he
out.
tells them, she wants to someone.
Right.
And so even when he during his harvest, they have a specific Thanksgiving procession for G-boys. And you must have seen certain
They see
videos
them
where
spraying
you see
money
Yahoo boys
anyhow.
spraying money in the church, and everybody's just going crazy. Like,
This is what I want to address. Our church does not self-purify. These people, anybody, right now as we speak, anybody can set up church and put a signboard there and call it Celestial Church of Christ. That's what we need to address as a church, because people who now engage with such a parish will not see it as a misrepresentation of the larger Celestial Church. And for as long as we continue to condone them, they are seen as a part of us. Anyone whose stock and trade is to work for criminals cannot represent our church and cannot represent Christ. All right? But let's not blame those who give us backlash from the outside, for they see these things and we cannot pretend those things are not there.
Sorry for cutting it. You know, I was saying it a couple of minutes ago that when you engage these people, when they engage you in a discussion, they tell you, look, I'm not telling you this because I heard it. I saw it firsthand. Come to the parish behind my house. This is what they do. Come to the parish on my street. This is how they do. And like you mentioned earlier, sir, that, you know, anybody can just get up this today and say, I'm a celestial shepherd. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen firsthand, you know. So, and there are certain people who even see the church or shepherdship in Celestial Church as a retirement plan. I've collected my pension. I'll go and buy land somewhere and build a church, and then I'll become a shepherd. No actual training.
And a representative of the pastor that comes to like sanctify, or a recording of all the parishes we have, and
well, that's an ongoing process. But I'm glad we're talking about all of this.
Okay.
And we are not shying away from the truth. But it's a process. We are 76 years old. We have to be seen to start self-purifying, not just talk about it.
Right.
Some people have to be sanctioned. Some people it's not about killing the church. It's about giving the church life, decent life. So while the goal will not be to close shop or shut down, the goal should be a continuous self-evaluation and purification of the celestial system.
Thank you very much, sir. Because there is what I have discovered, you know, with my few years on earth as a small boy, is that anywhere human beings are gathered, you cannot completely expurgate excesses. You will find people doing things, no matter what label it carries,
extremists.
Whether it's a church or a mosque or a club or anywhere where, you know, people even put on a pious posture. You'll find people behaving anyhow. But what I see, like what you said about self-purification, is that for churches who still have a semblance of a good face out there, they have a system that punishes bad behavior. And so, and that's one of the things that I have seen to not really have a foothold here.
Yeah,
you find a shepherd who has done this, and he's saying that, look at my superior, he did it.
The churches.
You find a shepherd that, you know, this is not to cast aspersions. This is just, you know, dealing with the elephant in the room. You find a shepherd.
Sense.
Yes, you find a shepherd who impregnates a member of his parish, and he says, I have superiors that have done far worse. So, and
he's probably right. And those superiors cannot be expected to hand justice down to him.
Right. So I believe that there has to be a system. We've heard so many atrocities in other churches. You know, I don't want to mention names. They don't, you know, pull back in mentioning our name, but we won't mention theirs.
We shouldn't.
Probably because we've been at the center of backlash. We know how it feels.
Yeah, right.
So we don't want to inflict the same pain.
Yeah.
You know, but then these things happen. We find pastors in other parishes who were found with, you know, dead bodies of children, of you know, and all sorts of things.
In foundation of churches.
But it seems not to ever rub off or erode their reputation. But it's always Celestial Church. You know, recently there was this private contractor that was employed to maybe evacuate
a cesspool.
Yes, a cesspit. And he died inside the place. I don't know if I'm getting the specifics of the story.
It happened in the recesses of Lekki.
And before we knew it, the story sprung up from different sources, different blogs, and they said they used it for ritual. And when they got his body out, his parts were not there anymore. And all these things were unfounded and eventually were found to be false. But then the damage had been done.
Done already.
You see a blogger who came out and spent about 30 minutes castigating the church on something that was false. And then his apology was just 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Easier to do.
And so coming back to a system that purifies itself, how can that be put in place?
Okay.
We're already doing that. And my closing shots, if you allow me, would be that we now have to be more intentional about the projections of the image of our church within and outside. And to that end, I really want to commend the activities of the CCC media, because for the first time in 76 years, we truly have a media professional as head of CCC media. In the past, we've had eminently qualified professors, but who knew nothing about media, asked to come and head Celestial Media. But right now we do have someone who is able to do that. And the good work is already showing.
Beautiful. So aside from also talking about the backlash, we need to talk about the response to the backlash. We find that many of us in this church, how we respond to backlash is very poor, sir. For instance, this case that happened with Pastor Ibiame.
Yeah.
He came out to say certain things about the church.
I feel like the church should have a single voice.
The thing is,
for every one of us,
as saddening, as saddening as his remarks were, the responses of shepherds and church members made the matter worse. Worse, completely worse. And I believe that we the way we respond to these things are as important as whatever in the first place. Anybody can say anything.
Right.
Anybody who has a mic and a platform and members in this church can say anything. But our response is also very important. We found certain shepherds of the church calling him out.
Pastor Ibiame, when he said this thing that a lot of us didn't like, said it in good English.
He did.
Even when he used pidgin, it was good pidgin.
Yes, it was.
The spokesman for the Celestial Church, Super Evangelist Kayode Ajala, responded, and it was timely. His response was printed. What Celestians who had pages on social media should have done was just to rebroadcast the official response of the church. But no.
That's one of the problems,
We had people who have self-appointed themselves as spokespersons for Celestial
Church. Yes.
Many of them half-baked illiterates who can string 2 sentences of English right.
Shots fired. Poo.
Yes. No, I don't. I say this all the time. I'm very heavy on education in Celestial Church. If we can get our members to embrace education, send all their children to school, even go to adult education levels for those who lost that opportunity, half of our image problems in Celestial Church will be solved.
I think that will begin with a force that actually has an educational
sector or system. I think
no,
maybe
system,
we don't need to set up our own primary schools or secondary schools, no. But we should stop saying things like Emma Fogbon Weba Ijo, because the effect of that is you're telling those who are educated their education has no meaning in the church.
Right.
We should be seen as a church.
We grew up with
to hear those cliches.
To hear cliches like ìwé náà lè fi sọ ìjọ mímọ́ dá nǹkan tó dà yìí.
It's not good. It continues to repress education rather than make it something attractive to.
So what do you say to people who say Papa Oshofa Oshakawe, although that's fallacy though, but
thank you very much.
Oshofa Law School. Who says Oshofa Okawe? Oshofa Law School.
Please, our founder is a strong, wise, educated man.
Many people who quote him they know the least about him. They don't know.
Daddy, what do you think? What do you think you can say to the audience out there? How do you think you can admonish everyone to respond to the backlash or to stop the backlashes from being more frequent as
I
they
beg all
used to be?
Celestians
Okay.
who have social media handles
All right, sir.
to stop speaking on behalf of the church. They
Right.
have no
Period.
business responding to anything or anyone
Any
on behalf of
backlash.
the church.
Yes, sir.
I appeal to those who are on social media and have titled all their handles by the name CCC or Celestial Church
Mm.
to be mindful of that.
Mhm.
Look, do you find blogs with MFM on them? Blogs with RCCG on them? No,
Mm.
only Celestial Church.
Mhm.
You can't even find any blog naming itself as CNS.
Is
Mhm.
that so?
No, you won't.
There is.
They are official handles. If you see CNS there, it's an official handle. Only in Celestial Church. We are just too wild. So my advice is, if right now you are enjoying the privilege of the authorities of the church not blaming you for cyberbullying
Mm.
and misrepresenting the church, then why don't you just convert all your blogs that you have titled, named by the name of the church, to only deal positive things about the church,
Right.
not reactions,
Mm.
positive things. Look for celestial testimonies, share. Stop pulling down the image of the church by highlighting
Mm.
what
The
Because
is
of,
not
because
anomalies.
of engagement.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
true. We would have loved to continue this conversation, but we
Yeah.
have to peg it somewhere. We just have to peg it somewhere.
Stop.
You know, Daddy, like I said when I saw you this morning, it's always a pleasure to see you.
So that wraps it up for today's episode, and we hope to see you in the next episode. Signing out as Oyinkan and my co-host Joseph Ernle. Thank you. We appreciate all our sponsors. Thank you so much for helping us on this beautiful journey. See you next time. Ciao. Bye.